Hello, 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 Tampa Bay listeners and beyond. You've got everything PEO, Money Talk 1010 AM. I'm Evan Collart. And yet again, and Lionel Francis. We sure do miss the big guy. It's been nice having him. In studio today, co-founder of Florida Resource Management, Kelly Anderson, somebody that's been a dear, dear friend and, heck, I'm going to go out to say mentor of mine in this crazy little business. We came up in the PEO space 20 years ago. It's been a heck of a ride. And we are, I think, just absolutely lucky to have him in studio with us. He's a true ball of knowledge. Kelly, thanks for coming, my friend.
Thank you, Evan. This is exciting to be here. Long time coming. I know that we talk about it often, frequently, weekly, about the success of the show and the success of our industry and our business, and I'm so happy that you allowed me to be a part of it.
Anytime, brother, anytime. You've been kind of behind the scenes from the beginning. We've been having our little huddle talks after the show and really a big influential member in it, and it's about time you joined the party, my friend.
Thank you.
I don't know if you caught last week, we always kind of take a moment and pay some homage to anyone that takes time out of their day and contributes to the show. We had Warren Spiewak, a manager with Safeguard Global, kind of a neat outfit, Kelly. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but they essentially hire, recruit, onboard, and do payroll for up to 179 countries. Whoa. And this has been a big hole, a big miss in this industry, in my opinion. You know, I work with dozens of PEOs here at PEO Advisors, and I would say, that's a kind of a roadblock for all of them is if you're hiring out of the country, we cannot help you. So it was kind of neat having Warren here and go through that process. It's similar to PEOs. They call it GEO, Global Employer Organization, right? A little different from the PEO, but the same model. And I learned a thing or two last week. Oftentimes you'll hear the question, can you cover workers' comp in these countries? And it does not exist. All right, they'll set you up with their payroll. They'll keep you compliant. They'll even convert the money in all these countries, but there is no workers' comp attachment to it. But that said, there's still kind of a big need in the void in that industry. Certainly post-pandemic, I think, where so many businesses have gone home-based and certainly employees have gone home-based. And that tide has changed a little bit where, the big commercial front just isn't the way any longer, and you can work anywhere. And certainly employees out of the country has kind of come up a lot. Are you seeing that at all at FRM?
Yeah, a little outsourcing. I think even in the softer companies, white collar, they would adapt an outsourcing series of employees out of the country. So I think that probably would be a great bridge that global company's doing to bring those call centers together, or maybe the sales cycle might be taking place out of the country, and so I could see that being a huge fit.
Yeah, it's real big in tech, right? These programmers, they're building apps, they're building, platforms, and it seems to be, yes, certainly more white-collar based through this program, but, massive companies, Fortune 500 companies are jumping on this, and literally, whole hiring, the whole crew can be over there at times. So I feel like it was a neat time and the proper time to have Warren on the show. Well, I want to, executive producer Erin Korniger, she always throws some stuff in my lap from week to week, with the goodies. And there's a big one this week I want to highlight, and it's Senate Bill 718. Okay. Governor Ron DeSantis and his administration, has passed some legislation in recent years, going back to 2019, which banned, so-called sanctuary cities. And he's kind of continued to push that envelope as he's preparing for his 2024 White House bid, as so many think. He's frequently blasting these immigration policies. He is. And they've put one on the bill. It passed in the House 83-36. I heard it passed in the Senate 27-10. But essentially, the House gave final approval to this bill that includes stepping up the requirements on businesses to check immigration status of workers, cracking down on the people that may bring migrants into the county illegally, and certainly the country. And Florida really seems to be kind of on the forefront of trying to collect this data. Certainly if someone, hospital patients injured seems to be the big way they're getting it. But it's kind of, hit the ground running here. It doesn't go in effect until July, is my understanding, but there's already been a little bit of some movement on the job sites even.
It's true. I think for some of my clients that might have a hiring practice that sometimes might be a little loose or might not necessarily have the certain protocols needed, I've had those conversations with them saying a change is coming. And, from time to time, you find the seriousness of a client that really wants to know more. And of course, I want to be an advocate for that. I want to guide them into the right direction. But I'm still finding that employers out there are they're worried about it when and if it becomes a problem. And unfortunately, I wish that I could tighten that up, but PEOs can only do so much.
Sure, sure. It looks like we've got a call. You're on with everything PEO.
Hey, buddy, this Lionel. Hey, Kelly. How you doing?
Good, Lionel. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm good. Miss you, man. You doing all
You
right?
too. Yeah, doing great.
Good, good. Hey, I was listening. It is taking effect right now. It's actually today is only Wednesday. I've had calls every day, Monday, Tuesday. Yesterday until 9 p.m. last night, when everyone concerned about what's happening. I actually have clients that have called me, and there's a strip in Norfolk Myers where the hurricane, some of the work is being done. She actually told me, Lionel, do you know this strip? I said, I know exactly where you're talking about. She said, there's no one there. They're all gone.
Wow.
They're not waiting. They are leaving now because of the consequences and what could happen and to make sure they could find work. It has gone as far as now people are getting arrested. They're getting stopped several times. If they have a company truck or a truck with a name on it or no name and there's several people in the truck and they're in a construction site, they're getting asked a lot of questions right now. So the effect is happening right now, and I really have mixed emotions about it. I understand what we're trying to do, but everyone needs to work, So I really find it hard when I'm talking to a client on the phone saying, Lana, we want to work. We want to work. We got these people who want to work, and they won't give us. Now we can't do anything. We either going home or going somewhere else where they're not sticklers with this E-Verify. So it's getting tough out there right now.
Yeah, it's Florida's always been, or not always, but recently has been a verify state, but without any compliance and without anybody really policing it, it's really just been looked kind of the other way on it. But this is going way farther than having an undocumented worker as a dishwasher behind the restaurant, right? And there's that clear separation of church and state, if you will, right? I mean, state and federal governments are so hodgepodged on this. We've got the federal branch allowing them in, putting these court dates at 2 and 3 years out before they have the first checkup. What are they supposed to do in the meantime? And then there's administrations on the state level, like Ron, who's really been on the forefront of cracking down on this. Where are they supposed to go? What are they supposed to do? And all of us been in this space a long time. Lionel, Kelly, myself. 20 years in this game. I don't think anyone's naive on this phone call. We've all had it where we show up to the job site and we have our client pull out their PEO roster. They've got 15 on the roster. They've got 18 on the job. There's 2 or 3 at every site in most Florida job sites. But this is becoming where it's almost the prevalent workforce, not the minority. And
Right.
It's a slippery slope coming to a theater near you very soon.
For sure. There used to be years ago, they would say the migrant worker works harder, works faster, and the employer would gravitate towards that because they've maybe felt like their domestic worker really wasn't putting in the time and the effort that this first chance migrant worker might be excited to do. And unfortunately, I think some of the migrant worker has been Americanized, and so they have found the ways of maybe not as working as hard as they might have worked, I don't know, 4, 5, 10 years ago. So I think that dynamic is really looked at as what is the benefit of not necessarily gravitating towards that hiring practice, but more maybe an influence of increasing the wages and getting a better quality worker because of the amount of money they can make. So I think that's part of it too. It plays into it, certainly. But yeah, more to come for sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Lionel.
You're definitely right on that because I do see that's the only step they're going to have. I mean, if there's not enough employees out there who are willing to do the job and there's a few that you have or will, they could dictate what they pretty much want to get paid. And what are you going to say? No, they'll just go to the next person. who's
Yeah.
willing to give them what they want. For a while, I could see it hurting us here in Florida for a while. It's going to be a bit. But can it turn around? It can. It's just something we got to wait and see. How much will it affect the economy itself? How will it affect companies that have been doing this for a long period of time? And now, with everything else going up, the interest rates, materials, and after COVID, and people pretty much demanding, hey, I could go to McDonald's and make $16, $17 an hour, and that's what you're paying me here to jump on top of the roof. I'm sorry, that's not going to work anymore. I need more. They're going to have to come out of pocket and start paying these people.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens.
The feeling the effects of that great resignation is still, far compacted more than I think you see with the everyday eye. But this is a slippery slope even for PEOs. I mean, there's some talks out there about holding the PEOs responsible and even possibly having this be a finable action. Now, a lot of the PEOs have started to get away from collecting that I-9 form. And for anyone that's not familiar, that's a post-9/11 citizenship verification form, right? But a lot of these PEOs, they never meet the employees that come on board. They never see their IDs. There's no real true verification of that. So by taking that I-9 and collecting it, you're almost stating that you verified this to be a legal employee. What's your take on this, Kelly? I mean, I would assume there's going to be a lot of PEOs, getting out of collecting the I-9 business, but
Yeah, lucky for us, Florida Resource Management and the team there made a conscious decision right away. Brand new 2012, we made that decision that we weren't going to participate in the verification process. We felt like that was the employer level. I-9s traditionally have a protocol of the accountability of the I-9 has to sit with the physicality of the employee and the employer. So it really made no sense to us that if we could not control the physicality of the employment, that we should not probably house the data either. So it was easy for us, but I know a lot of my competition and Florida Resources competition, we find that they do collect it. So I think that those PEOs that are in that collection phase of the I-9s and E-Verify could find maybe a little bit of a litigious fight keeping the fines and fees where they belong on the employer record or level, but legislatively, because there's no extreme talk about PEOs intertwining themselves with that employment, I think there could be some misfires, so to speak, shot across the bow, if you will. And I think there's a lot that's going to learn in the next couple of months about shoring this bill up and how far it can be reached. So more to come, I'm sure.
yeah, to hear that they're already making the stops and checking the sites when this isn't even to go into effect for 60 days, it's alarming. Florida is one of the few states that actually has a dedicated workers' comp inspector department, if you will, that is out there policing it. And very few states have this, but it feels like they're really trying to get on the forefront of compliance and enforcement when there's still 60 days out before we even be down that path.
Right.
But
Well, I tell you what, today's Wednesday, and I'm still getting calls. Well, Lionel, how should I handle this? How should I do this? Here in Southeast Personal Leasing, we've had several meetings, and it looks like we're having more meetings with the attorneys and how we should handle, especially the I-9s right now. We are collecting the I-9s right now. And my discussion with them as well is like, hey, are we going to do away with it? And that's a discussion we're having right now to see if we are. But I also had discussions with some others that stated, and what they said was, even though we do collect it, it's still the employer's responsibility when that information is put on that I-9.
Lionel,
and once
we're going to break. So sorry, Lionel. I know you were mid-sentence there. We got a hard out at 6:20. I guess you weren't looking at the clock. But for those that missed that first segment, in studio today, Kelly Anderson, co-founder of Florida Resource Management, certainly one of PEO Advisor's favorite PEOs. Was started with Kim Higgins and Kelly Anderson, both really kind of 20 years in the business. Came up through one of my old favorite PEOs, Administrative Concepts Corp. Kim started there as the GM and worked your way all the way up to the COO, and yourself, Kelly, starting as sales supervisor, and by the end of it, running a pretty amazing staff over there of over 40 sales reps, 75 brokers. You know, ACC was a disruptor. They really were a juggernaut in this space. It was a heck of a run. And I know you've kind of followed a lot of that model with FRM, you know, keeping it on moderate risk, specializing in the artisan contractors. And I say it all the time on this show. We win on speed. You know, whether you get the business from an agent or, you know, from door knocking or cold calling, all right, you know, speed is what brings the victory in this game. And FRM's kind of taken that to heart, you know, keeping that model on the forefront. And I think it's really contributed to a lot of your success. Starting the PEO in 2012, already north of 240 million in annual payroll. It's a beast. I mean, congrats, kudos to you, man.
Thank you. You know, part of that, really, the majority of that is kind of pigtailing on what you said. It's service first, and who says yes first in this space. And so, saying yes to clients and servicing them. A lot of times, you find out that you know, businesses say, you know, service. They lead with that all the time. They think that, you know, that's the mantra. But, you know, without service, like oxygen, you die, right? So we preach it every day. We talk about it every day about servicing our clients, and not for the team at FRM. My partner, my wife, Kim Higgins, her father, Pat Powers. It's really has become a family affair. I have my brother. Kim has her sister. So we're really kind of molding second generation family effort to the PEO space. But moreover, what we really care about is our staff. Our staff is the one that's the hero here. They're the ones that are grinding out the payrolls, answering the tough questions, servicing the clients above and beyond the call. And so, you know, kudos to them. And if they're listening, I really appreciate all of you. And thanks for making FRM a huge, dynamic, unstoppable PEO.
Love that. Yeah, we had David Brodsky, chief underwriter of Suns, in here a couple weeks ago. And he had a line that just stuck with me. And it's, you know, we're not in the declination business, we're in the recommendation business. And that has been bouncing around like marbles in my head ever since that show. And sometimes these PEOs scale and grow, and they almost get a little too big for their britches. They start doing these payroll deadlines, and we didn't have the paperwork by this day deadline, and the stay late, work nights and weekends falls out the window, and it's corporate mantra 101. And anyone that's done this business long enough knows that is just not practical, right? Sometimes we have to work on the business owner's time. And if they're that, you know, 1 to 10 man operation and they don't have a back office and they don't have an HR department, they're out on the job site all day. That means the enrollment goes down nights and weekends. That means whatever it takes to get them on, happy, and compliant. And sometimes you got to go a little above and beyond. And I think, you know, there's really no other PEO out there that I feel safer when putting an account on with, to know that to those lengths, it will happen.
Yeah.
And, you know, and like anything, that starts from a corporate culture or you know, and from the top down.
It's true. And if Kim and I are not necessarily putting in that kind of grind each and every day, you find out that, you know, any level of support for our staff might share that with the clients, and we don't want that. So we're trying to shine every day. We're trying to produce every day. We're trying to be the best we can be every day, and hopefully that's resonating, and we hope to pass it on to our clients as well.
So if you had to, and I know it's probably hard to say it like this, that one thing that's really led to FRM's success, if you had to really, you know, kind of put your thumb on it, what would you contribute it to?
Oh my goodness, my wife's going to kill me for this, but answer the phone. I know that's so simple, right? It's so simple to just say, what do you mean answer the phone? Everybody answers the phone. It's not true. Our competitors have audexes, they have voicemails, they have, you know, different ways of communicating, emailing and texting, and all those are formidable and they should be used 100%. But we feel like at FRM, you got to pick up the phone. These people are calling to hear somebody. The resolution is a resolution of a person, not resolution of a process. And so they need a person, not a process. And so we try to be that process, and the only way we know how to do that is pick up the phone.
Yeah, it's fair. And, I think another thing that you do really well is I know you've got, half a dozen or so ladies in that office kind of running that payroll department, and every single one of them are equipped to pick up the phone and service the need at hand.
Yep.
Right. So many, take their titles to almost, it gets to their head and, oh, I don't handle that.
Yep.
Barbara does or Jackie does. And next thing you know, your own clients are kind of stuck in voicemail hell.
Yep.
I just had a client today, say, what would you say the biggest difference is between PEOs and ADP? And I don't mean this specific to ADP. Really, this is specific to any kind of third-party payroll platform. They really just become big payroll, like software companies,
Yep.
right? You're on an auto dialer. You never have a dedicated tech, or in your case, a team that's surprised to work your file efficiently and diligently to get through that. And it's really kind of circling back.
It is.
Right?
Kim started it that way, and she's never veered from it. She just believes that every client deserves the same amount of attention and can handle anything. That transfer is not resolution, right? The fixing the challenge is the resolution, not transferring the challenge. And Kim's been formidable about that, and she's been a dog with a bone about that. So it's worked for us.
Yeah, no, it's fair. And we say you're writing moderate risk, but let's be honest, you're in there hooping it up with all the big guys. You're writing the framers, you have height exposure, you have everything else in there. You've been able to manage this thing in a way that's almost unprecedented. I mean, if you really kind of peel the onion back on, and I think a big part of that is you handling the claims yourself. Right, and
Yeah.
not using the third party nurse case manager and the TPAs, and keeping grounded on that, like how to really steer this thing. Who can do it best than the owner?
Yeah, it's true. It's oftentimes when we talk about managing that risk and managing that employee that has a mishap or a mistake or a challenge on the work site, oftentimes we feel like there's a story before it and there's a story after it. And by the time the claim is processed or the risk has occurred, that story might get lost. And that story might be a compassionate story. That story might be the effort of taking care of the client in a way that they feel like they're taken care of. And I think that when you interject that first resolution process and you get in the face of the business owner and you demand more information about a situation or a challenge or a near miss, or anything that might happen on a job site. Maybe it's not even about the claim. Maybe it's more about a character practice with employment. Maybe it's something that might turn into a claim. And I think that if the person that's responsible for paying the liability of, in this case, workers' compensation, I think it's imperative that I get involved. And to leave it up to anybody else, I think wouldn't be fair to the staff. I don't think it'd be fair to my partner. I don't think it'd be fair to the employees that are servicing the hell out of these clients. So I just think it's the only way it can be.
Well, let's stay on that a little bit. First of all, you're listening to Everything PEO, Money Talk 1010 a.m. In studio today, Kelly Anderson, co-founder of Florida Resource Management. So you're dealing with these business owners. You're helping them navigate these claims. I mean, what's your biggest advice? Is it they've got to have safety meetings every day? I mean, obviously you're big on company culture. I would imagine you're recommending that for them as well.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good entry point. Really, there's a couple key bullet points that I have, and it's really tough to advise a client that is already safe. If I'm trying to educate a client and they've never had a claim, these steps and processes that we talk about are going to sometimes fall on deaf ears. But if there is a claim that happened, I take that time to create a culture and try to real quickly give those hot topics on how this business owner might be able to deter it from happening again. And one of those is quite simple, and it's elementary. But if you're a 5 or 7 man plumber, you should be meeting every day in the morning. And it doesn't necessarily have to be safety, but you should at least talk about safety as some element. That is not only the element of safety, but the element of care, the care of culture, the care of the person. What did you do? How was last night? Any ailments bothering you? Are you able to drive? Is there any disruptions that you might be involved in servicing your clients today? Just a whole culture of an employer really caring about at 8 o'clock at morning, not just getting to the job, but getting to what can make this a better job for you, the employee. And I think that starts with the care of the employer. And without that little meeting, 3 to 7 minutes, I think that the employee that might have a little, challenge from last night or yesterday, or he's upset about something that happened a week ago, having that every day as a regiment, I think makes an employee feel like, hey, yeah, this guy cares. This employer really cares.
Yeah, I think that's fair, right? And staying in that 5 to 7 man plumber mindset, the reality is two or three of them probably have the same last name anyhow, right? It's no different at FRM and PEO Advisors. My partner, my brother Eric Chekarelis, we started this thing back in 2010. My sister-in-law works here. I've had my ex work here. It becomes family. I have a trio of three women, that mother-in-law and two daughter-in-laws at the company. But taking that time, even with all of that intimacy, and you would imagine we all know what everybody's got going on. We don't.
Right.
After 5 o'clock, they go this way, we go that way. What happened? Were you up all night fighting with your woman? How does that work? How does that break down to take that moment of touch every morning? We actually had a climber the other day that literally they do a mental aptitude test every morning. And that was like, wow, that blew my mind. I hadn't heard that one yet.
Yep.
And sharp.
I
Real
think
sharp.
it's a great way to start the day, and it doesn't have to be full of pomp and circumstance, and it doesn't have to be full of drama, and it doesn't have to be he said, she said. It doesn't have to be that way. It can just be 2 to 5 minutes of really just saying, let's cut out the crap for 2 to 5 minutes and find out what's going on. That's a great segue into if anything physically ailing you, which is a great way to manage safety. If Tommy is coming from playing beach volleyball yesterday and his ankle's a little sore today, could that turn into a workplace accident? Could the carelessness of what you do before or after work come to be negligence of a workplace accident? And I think that making a signature roster of welfare saying my employees are okay is not a horrible way to start the day. And it's certainly not a horrible way to finish the day. I think it's a great way to come back to the shop at 5:15 or 6 o'clock and be able to sign off that I got a nice welfare check. I'm good. Everything's great. I have no ailments. I think it gives the culture of safety and demands that there's accountability to that safety. Not just talking about it, not just talking about ascending and descending from a ladder, but really signing off saying today was a good day, accident free. And I think that's a great way to promote, the excitement of being a profitable company. Workers' compensation premiums go up when you have accidents. They're a strain on the business owner. And I think being able to promote safety is being able to promote a profitable company.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, we've all had it where someone comes in, again, 20 years in this space, I feel like we've kind of seen it all, but I'm sure there's a couple stones unturned out there. But the reality is they're not acting right that morning. They get an hour into their day, claim happens, right?
Yep.
With that mental checklist, or physical, I guess I should say, having that moment before and after every shift could eliminate so many of those.
Accountability too, right? Because that's what's part of it. Oh my goodness, I am having a bad day, but I got this meeting in 5 minutes. I've got to show up. I got to be up. I got to do what I need to do to make sure that I'm an asset. And I think that's a great way to do that. Also, driving that information into an employee handbook makes an employee feel like there's an extreme accountability here, that this is not a haphazard company and they don't run things willy-nilly. And I think that gives them the confidence to say that they're in the right spot. They're with an institution that's going to grow, not just fly by night. And I think that makes an employee feel like I want to be a part of this. And if I want to be a part of it, I'm certainly not going to go hurt myself. I mean, not on purpose or not on accident. No different than a piece of equipment that you might have on a job site. If an employer has a piece of equipment that's very essential to the betterment of the company and the profitability of the company, and that piece of equipment goes down, that employer does everything they can as quickly as they can to get that piece of equipment back up. And yet, some of these employees have a workplace accident, and you find out the employer says, well, go get it taken care of. I don't think that's the right way to do that. I think you treat that no different than a backhoe. If you're a swimming pool company and your backhoe goes down, you'd be bringing that low boy on job site immediately, bringing it to a mechanic and having it fixed within hours. How should that be any different from an employee? If he gets hurt, you should be escorting him to the hospital or a medical facility. You should be standing beside him, her. You should be making sure that you're giving the medical documentation that's sent to the employer of record about workplace safety, about return to light duty, about all the elements that takes care of this employee. the best restrictions for this employee, the best ongoing medical care for this employee. That's the culture that makes employees not want to get hurt.
Oh,
They,
that's
they don't want to
huge.
do it.
That's huge. And I don't know. We've got about 2 minutes here before break. I don't know if you remember this, but one of the very first claims you and I had together many moons ago at ACC, it was a limousine company. And the gentleman said that his back was injured due to driving the limo that had bad shocks and struts.
Yeah.
And that was a benchmark mover for me. Ultimately, went to the clinic, failed their urine analysis, still Morgan and Morganed up, and got the claim to go through by simply saying, the attorney said, well, how do you know they weren't self-medicating on the way to the appointment because they were in such pain? And so taking the time, like you just said, right? If it's no different than a piece of equipment, you're in human capital means just as much. Going with them to the clinic, going with them to the post follow-ups, to know every step of the way how the doctor signed off, what the status is, keeps your premiums down, keeps their costs in line, keeps the claims moving efficiently, and then it's also a little tougher for them to kind of play stupid, right? Well, you just went to the follow-up and said your back was not hurting anymore.
Yep.
True accountability on all sides really keeps this thing running.
It's true. And I think that too, even if it's legit, I think the employee then the employee then looks at the employer like they care. This guy drove me to the facility. He made sure that I was okay. He escorted me out. He drove me home. He was a part of the whole process. And I think that makes an employee look at, he cares about me. So if this employee hurt is going to go now get an attorney, now he's got to look at the face of the guy who just helped him. And now I'm going to go sue him. I'm going to go hurt him because he did what? He cared about me. He brought me to the hospital. He looked after me. He made sure that my claim was running smoothly. He made sure the medical bills are paid for. It's really tough to litigate, compassionate care for the culture of employment.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think there's also, just a lack of understanding that when you open up that can of worms and attorneys get involved, then really everyone has to stop talking. Attorneys have to talk to attorneys now, and there is no more compassionate. There is no more, going that extra mile to make sure you've been made whole because attorneys are involved. Loving this kind of, we just kind of fell into this claims management and how to properly get through some of these steps. And then, of course, good old commercial break came in. Did you have any more you wanted to put on that?
Yeah. So, what we were talking about at the break, really, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't bring it up. The frequency of a claim that's taking place with some employers, depending upon the industry that they're in. Sometimes you find out it's really less to do about safety and more to do about the hiring practice. I oftentimes will say to a business owner that's had a frequency issue is you hired the claim. You hired it. You didn't study the culture of the employee enough to find out whether the character could be an asset or a liability. And there's no judgment here. This is not about judging a person. This is just about finding some character traits that are eye-openers to employers when they get them on the job and they find out that these things were glaring. They were in their face the whole time and they didn't realize that. So I think oftentimes if we in this industry have clients that have frequency issues, it is not a workplace safety element. It's a hiring culture element. And employees act as if and like others. So what I mean by that is they act as if Johnny did it last week, so why can't I do it this week? And like others is he hired an attorney, and so will I. And so that culture is part of what I try to then find these clients that have frequency. And even if they're a new client to me and I find out that they have frequency, will they allow me to incubate them in a successful way where we can increase the hiring practices, put a high potency of care on safety elements, and try to train the culture to become a better client and really become a better employer. Really tough to say and make that successful. But for those companies that have been around for 10 or 15 years and it's been passed down through generations, you find out that the next generation, they are influenced by this. They want, my dad has been running this for 20 years. He's finally passed it over to me, and now I'm going to do it different. And so those are great individuals to try to train a culture and change the way that they hire.
It's so huge, and I really believe it's an intimate touch that you just don't get at most PEOs. 4 out of 5, whatever that number would be, I have no idea. But most PEO owners, first of all, aren't taking the time to manage their own claims like you have, and then to take that time to help coach these folks through a claim, how to prevent them, to go through proper hiring practices. And I get it. There's just some business owners out there that they look at workers' comp, and this is what the insurance is for. A claim gets filed, they go to the clinic, they call 911. That's what this is all about. But yeah, I think that next generation coming up is first of all, education's everywhere. I mean, we all have a computer in our hand these days. We can all look it up in a matter of moments. But when you get into that, you've taken over dad's business. You understand his premium's gone up year after year after year. How do I finally get my arms around that? Getting with FRM and Kelly is just massively impactful on turning that around once and for all.
Yep. It's true. As soon as they understand that there's four layers of businesses that are taking the opportunity of a workplace injury and they're profiting from it, as soon as they kind of understand that you think, Mr. Business Owner, this is a claim and Johnny got hurt. What you might not be realizing is it's 4 people are going to make money off of this. And so when they look at it like that, like, whoa, I thought I was just compassionately taking care of an employee that twisted an ankle. They don't understand that the attorney is going to get 33 1/3 or close to. They don't understand that the bill review company that's processing the claim is going to get paid. They don't understand that the insurance company is going to get paid on an increased promulgation of a mod. They don't understand that the cost of insurance is going to go up and they're going to get paid less. They don't understand that. And I think that's a great way to escort the whole idea that workers' compensation claims is a business. That's why there's such a thing called a professional claimant. There's people that are called a professional claimant. They go to work under the idea that I might get hurt today, and they take that opportunity and make money off of it. So I think that kind of talk, that straight talk, that awareness talk, that reality talk is very helpful to clients. And like you said, sometimes they don't want to hear it. And those are the guys that are paying 20% more than they should.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
unfortunately, there's PEOs out there that are okay with that. And I just don't see it that way. I don't want to charge you 20% more for ignorance or intolerance or lack. I want to pay you 20% less because you're a partner.
Yeah.
And that's what FRM's supposed to do.
Yeah, it's, when the attorney caps got lifted a few years ago, there used to be, for the listeners out there that aren't familiar with this, the state of Florida, was this just a Florida thing? I believe it was, right? The attorney cap?
Yeah.
Or NCCI states, maybe?
I think it's called Gestapo law.
And, where attorneys were capped on how much they could bill per injury. Well, fast forward a few years later, there's attorneys that simply won't take workers' comp cases on because that capping of the bill, they're, whether or not, I hate to say it, they're not making enough on it, but simply they weren't turning a profit by monitoring these claims, working these claims. And then the indemnity benefit portion used to cap at 2 years. That's the wage reimbursement portion of any claim, and that got bumped up to 5. And so with those reversals have come an increase in claims.
Yeah.
And I think it's just so smart of you to continue to manage these yourself. And you've really, put FRM in a position that few PEOs can say to have a mod under 0.70. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's accurate in the idea that in a guaranteed cost environment, I think you'll find PEOs out there that are, have a 50% cost of insurance, but they also have a $500,000 deductible or a $500,000 deductible. So it's unique for a guaranteed cost program to have that type of, I guess, underwriting profit, you might call it.
Sure.
But really, it's about institutionally protecting FRM so it can service for the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. That's the reason for that, to be able to be maneuverable in the workers' comp space, to have companies that want to be a part of our organization. And because FRM is probably one of 2 or 3 PEOs in the nation that have a mandatory return to light duty or paid for indemnification lack of light duty, we might be the only one in Florida that exercises that. So for the listeners that might want to know more about that just makes the employer make sure that when and if they're going to say they don't have a light duty environment, that unfortunately, contractually, they're obligated to service that client and a remuneration factor of payroll, right? It's their obligation to continue to pay if they're not going to perform a light duty environment. So
Yeah. And for anyone that's familiar with this, right, as a claimant's going through the processes of their workers' comp claim, eventually they get to that point of getting cleared for light duty. They can lift up to 20 pounds. They can work 10 hours a week, whatever those benchmarks are to start getting these claimants back to the workforce. And when you're on workers' comp, your indemnity benefit, the wage reimbursement portion is 2/3 of your standard pay, capped at a certain amount. I think about 500 a week, something like that. And so if and when they get approved for light duty, the whole point is to have the employer start putting them back on payroll at a limited basis to get that indemnity portion of the claim turned off. But so few business owners, kind of this is why I have workers' comp, it's so the bills are paid. They don't want to provide that light duty. And yes, it's funny you say that, Kelly, because almost every service agreement for our PEOs mentions it and it says it's in there, but it's got about zero enforcement. You are literally, out of the dozen or two PEOs that we're with, the only one that is actually holding these business owners responsible, accountable for their light duty when and if it's earned. And that helps in this education process. I mean, the gratitude from our employers that are with you, because as they go through these, and some business owners, they're in business 10 years, they've never had a claim, they just don't know what these things are like.
Right.
But as we focus on that heavy blue collar risk, we're playing the claim game. That's just what it is, right? We insure claims, they're bound to happen. I say it all the time, it's like Vegas, you're at the craps table, you're rolling the dice every single day, no matter how good you are, safe you are, how much training you do, OSHA, you're hitting all the OSHA benchmarks, it will happen. You get T-boned at a red light, you twist an ankle falling off a backhoe, whatever it is. But when that moment happens, being through FRM to get through those steps, it sure can be an eye opener, right? I mean, you really kind of get seasoned in a way that, I called in the claim and they paid it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a totally different look and feel. Kudos to you, my friend.
No, thank you.
So we had Pat Cleary on a couple weeks ago. We got about 7 minutes left in the show. President of NAPIO came on. It was a fun hour. He's just like one of us, Kelly. I mean, he's dropping swear bombs. He's kicking it up. He's really a fun guy. He was talking about how he's been on a bunch of radio shows up in the New York area. And, it's kind of woke up there and just getting annihilated. The call-ins and everyone was beating him up about this and that. And
oh, wow.
His stance is a little more right. It was kind of fun. But he talked about how the industry, he's been president of NAPIO 12 years. And over the last 10 years, the industry's quadrupled.
Wow.
And I mean, what a run under his tenure.
Yeah.
And then the next day I came to work and saw that he's actually stepping down December 31st.
Really?
Yeah. And of course it didn't mention what he's going on to next, but he's earned that time, right? He came into this, did a lot of lobbying and up on the Hill for DC's labor unions. I mean, he's done a lot of really neat things. Believe it or not, when he stepped into that role as president of NAPIO, he had no previous PEO experience.
My goodness.
He
must have got him for free.
I don't know. I mean, I think it was a big swing at the bat for NAPIO. He certainly had done some impressive things, but more in, like I said, labor union laws and things like that. But,
yeah,
I think the overall consensus of that moment was just really how outsourcing is at an all-time high. Another thing I learned on that show was literally 50% of the employees that are in PEOs are boiled down to just 3 states: California, Texas, and Florida.
Yeah.
Now, of course, some of that's just due to sheer population and capita and da-da-da-da-da. But what's your take on this? Why is the PEO model doing so well, quadrupled in 10 years? I mean, these are big figures.
Yeah, dense population probably is what everybody kind of gravitates towards as to why PEOs flourish in some cities and states and maybe not others. But really, it continues to be a communication. And I think for the most part, it still comes from the agent stronghold on the policyholder. The agent still has this, for lack of a better term, an unawareness of what a PEO really brings to them as an agent. I've had a friend for 30 years. We've separated. We grew up together. He moved to Colorado. I found out 30 years later. We got connected. He's a PNC agent. We had dinner, and he told me that one of his successes of his agency is going after PEO deals.
Mm.
And so as I kind of peeled back the onion, I was, in a quandary. Why would you specifically go after that? And he had said that his claim to fame is going to a business owner and saying, why can't you pay your own bills? Like kind of a stab to the ego, right?
Mm.
And so after I told him ad nauseum, that's not what a PEO does, But that's him. He's been doing it for a long time, and that's the scope of an agent's thought on what we're really all about. And if they really took a little bit of time, which he did, and now he's referring me business. So because he really didn't understand what the PEO was.
Amazing.
He just thought they were a threat to his book of business. He had no idea that they could be a part of his portfolio.
I don't understand how that veil in 2023, having been around since the 70s, having gone from 11 monopolistic states, whittled that down to just 4. And I heard one of those was considering changing, a little rumor in the mill. But, how we're not another feather in their cap, how they don't look at it as an ally to this position. And the reality is, Florida, it's been easy, right? The rates have gone down 8 out of the last 9 years. I mean, they're literally down 80% from when you and I first met and started kicking up in this business. So it's created a bit of a hard market here, and that's been simple. But
maybe it's more about the carrier putting appointment levels on these agents, and they can't peel off the business because I've got to hit my benchmarks. I've got to be able to hit this performance. Otherwise, my carrier is going to make me lose my appointment. So maybe it's not necessarily a lack of knowledge. Maybe it's just they're pigeonholed.
If they were really looking at it that way, and I'm not saying that you're wrong, but you would think that when they're looking at an account with frequency and severity, that they would almost want to put that in the PEO to keep their book healthy.
100%.
Right, and that's one neat thing, tough, I should say, about the workers' comp line, and different from any other line of insurance. The agent in the standard market, their margin on these deals is how they're producing, right?
Yep.
If they're not doing well on claims, then they start to cut down their margin. General liability, commercial auto doesn't work like that at all, but workers' comp does, and so because of that, it's one of the least favorite lines for these agents to write.
Yep.
But I just feel like the tide has turned so long, and that's almost what our goal is here, one show at a time. If we can help educate even just one insurance agent every week, I feel like we've done our job here. But it's still a bit shocking seeing these levels. Seeing the fact that nearly 2 out of 3 blue-collar companies in Florida are getting their insurance this way, that they would still look at us at the competition.
100%. It's an oddity, but PEO Advisors done an incredible job on educating thousands of agents, and I know that it's doing nothing but helping our industry, and so kudos to you and your team. I think you're a true blessing to what we do every day, and you should be put on a pedestal for sure.
I appreciate that. It's been a long road. And I know even our models are different, right? I know Eric and I at PEO Advisors, all we do is partner with insurance agents all over the country. I remember when you and I were kind of getting our start in this business, you were like, Evan, why and how? I can't stand that model.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather go do the door knocks, build that ultimate relationship. And there's no right or wrong way in this thing. There's a lot of ways to skin the cat. If the market ever goes soft again, maybe that'll happen. I mean, my first few years in the business, I only took 1 or 2 deals a year out of a policy and into a PEO arrangement because they could get the insurance everywhere. It was a very, very soft market. But as the market's hardened, now it's literally 2 or 3 deals a month we're taking from that policy and putting them into the PEO space.
True.
Well, that's a fast hour, my man.
Wow, just like that.
Just like that. We've got one show left before we take summer break. I believe we've got Suns coming in next week for our final show before summer. Don't worry, every week we'll be putting a show on our YouTube and on all the platforms, really. So there's still plenty of information coming out every week. Please, love God, appreciate your PEO, be kind to your staff, and know we're just on a 167-hour break.